Okay, we're broadcasting there. And we're already it says recording pause, so I'm going to start the recording again.
Oh, the broadcasting.
Okay, it appears that we are on the Zoom now, and we did a roll call where there are 5 that are present here in person under temporary order, which is House Bill 51. Thank you, House Bill 51. We are permitted to have a count towards quorum, have voted the members of the body electronic. And I understand that we may have members of the body electronically. So Mrs. Thomas, could you call the roll for those 2 members to see if they're on?
Mrs. Sachs,
I'm here.
Mr. Cooney,
Here.
Okay, very good. All members then are present, 5 physically present, 2 electronically. So we have not only quorum, but all members present. First agenda item is discussion, referrals, and recommendations regarding testimony provided to City Council at its March 21st, 2022 meeting related to item G on the initial amended agenda on that date. Motion to approve for an additional $129,420 to be placed into escrow for the Cuyahoga Cedar Road resurfacing project.
Yeah,
Who would like to take the lead on discussing this item?
yeah, I can take the lead on, since I called the special meeting.
Okay, this is what you had for.
Thank you. So after Monday's meeting, I was speaking to Councilman Rock since the project failed by vote. And he was bothered by the explanation by Mayor Brennan regarding the TLCI items. Mr. Rock then began doing a deep dive into the Cedar Road project. What he found was that this vote did not end the Cedar Road project by any means. There's actually a base project which council already approved in the budget. This $129,000 was a value add and is not required. Therefore, this brings up questions as to why the project was posed as in jeopardy after the vote. So a couple things. When we asked the engineer, I think it was 3 times after looking at the minutes, the scope of the project, council was always told resurfacing. When we specifically asked if anything was added to the project that necessitated this change, the council was told no more than 1 time. But this has not just been a resurfacing project. It was actually reconfiguring a major intersection. So I actually want to turn over the discussion to Councilman Rock, who is an architect by trade. We're very fortunate to have him on council to discuss the item further.
Okay, thank you. So at the meeting, March 21st, we were to review a $130,000 line item for additional funding for the Cedar Road project. And I guess it would be helpful if I could give a little bit of history as to how this project transpired. Back in 2020, we were going to do the Cedar Road project. It's going to be a $1.8 million estimated project. And then COVID hit and we parked it. We put the project on hold. We didn't know what was happening with COVID. Fast forward, we were going to commit to doing that this year. And we were, it was part of the mayor's budget, the Putting People First budget, that a $1.8 million Cedar Road resurfacing project would appear on the budget. As we were going through the budgeting process, we were told that costs had escalated close to $500,000, which is now a $2.3 million estimate for the project, quoted as the project. Due to what they are saying is, cost increases due to oil prices and trucking issues and material supply and just inflation in general. So, okay, so I understand. Now it's a $2.3 million project. Mind you, ODOT, who at the time had an 80% stake in this, capped their fees at 1.4 million. So they're not going to pay another dime. So the rest of it falls on University Heights. And I could not understand why this project was getting so expensive. I couldn't understand. So I kept asking, what's in this project, what's resurfacing. We approved a budget for $2.3 million. We approved a contract for this project to enter into a contract with the state of Ohio, Department of Transportation. And we were told we had to put the money into escrow. And that the money would just be in escrow and it would just be holding there. And we can remove the funds if and when we want to, if we do not move forward with the project. Okay, that gave me comfort. I said, okay, let's approve this project, knowing that we still don't know what the bids are going to look like. We still don't know if we have funding from NOACA. But now I know we're just going to park the funds into an escrow account. We can pull that out if we need to, which later I found out we can't. So fast forward, on Monday, we were told that there is a cost overrun. The bids were open on the 17th of March, and the low bid was about 2.4 million. There was a park construction, $2,400,832, and administration needed another $129,000 for an escrow to make whole this project. Again, I'm having a lot of trouble here understanding how this project balloons so expensively. And asked again, what is the scope of work in this project? And Mr. Cheney responded, it is mostly a surfacing job, and there's a couple other things, which the mayor in his comments said, thank goodness you said it. It was the first time we heard it, that there were TLCI items in this project. Now, I was on council in 2020 when this originally came before us. I was on council in 21 when it was not considered, and I'm on council now when we approved this project. And never, ever, ever was it said that this project was going to include other items beyond resurfacing. There was a couple things in there for bus pad repair, curbs, crosswalk, painting the crosswalk. But it was very vague in nature, very vague. And there was no backup given. And on Monday, we were expected to approve an appropriation of $130,000 with no backup, nothing. Okay. I couldn't go forward with it. I voted no. It did not pass. It failed. And the mayor said, we just killed the Cedar Road project, in which I said, no, we did not, because we can value engineer the project to get it back in the budget. Most government entities, when a project is over budget, in my profession, I do work for a government entity. It is my duty to get it back in the budget. We have deduct alternates, which means you can deduct from the project, or we value engineer the project to get it into budget, because the budget is the budget. You know about this bureaucracy, how hard it is to amend a budget. That did not happen. We were asked for another $130,000. So I'm a little turned off by that. Then I went home, I'm thinking, why have we not, there's gotta be something we cut out. Oh, so I asked, can we cut anything out? To Mr. Cheney's point, said, well, no, because I haven't seen the bid tabulation, which I have the bid tabulation if you need to see it. It's in the email from ODOT. And that he couldn't really think of anything that to value engineer out, which later I find out that GDP estimated the project. So they should know what can stay or what can go because you estimated the project. So, okay. So I went home, I decided to go onto ODOT's website. I became an interested bidder, download the bid documents from the bid portal, and found a 69-page drawing set of Cedar Road, which was never included in our drawing set, I'm sorry, in our packet when we voted on this thing, but it was available for online viewing for the bidders, okay? I looked at this drawing set and I'm seeing work in here that is not just resurfacing. We are reworking an entire intersection at Washington and Cedar. When was I going to be told we were reworking an entire intersection? When I'm driving on Cedar and have to be inconvenienced because, you know, it's down to 2 lanes, that's when I'm supposed to find out? Especially when I'm being told that this is a resurfacing job. It's not just, they call these curb bump outs, okay? Now, curb bump outs, you know, we have things on Warrensville Center Road. By the way, it's the first time I heard of curb bump outs on Monday for this project. Because as soon as the mayor said the word TLCI, the red flags came up in my head and I said, money, 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 this is gonna cost us some money. That's why this project got so out of control expensive. And I asked, what are the TLCI items that you're referring to? Which you said crosswalks, curbs, curb cut, bump outs, and decorative concrete. Which, by the way, the decorative concrete is $200,000. So I reviewed this, I was ticked that you misrepresented this project to us. We are the fiduciary responsibility of the city. We approve expenditures of the city, and you told us this was a resurfacing job. This is not a resurfacing job. This intersection is not a resurfacing job. There's all these additives in here, okay? This intersection is not a resurfacing job. Listen, we went through the budgeting process. We worked our tails off to get as close to a balanced budget as possible. We had to dip into savings to pay for this project, and no one said that it was going to have all these extra elements. It was just a resurfacing job. And it isn't. We're resurfacing other streets. But I went into the budgeting process knowing how important it is to resurface Cedar Road. Had I known it was going to include all these other elements, it may have changed my vote on the budget. I'm having total buyer's remorse right now. I went into the budgeting process thinking that we were going to just resurface the road. And had I known there were hundreds of thousands of dollars in added stuff to this project, we could have taken portions of that out and implemented other things in the mayor's budget that we had to cut. But instead we cut other things because we saw the importance of this, okay? Then I keep perusing through this document and I see here alternate 1 and alternate 2. Now I asked the city engineer, who by the way, you're hired to have our backs. You are hired to make recommendations of what projects we need for this city that are in the best interest of the city. And nowhere did you say that there were any alternate 1 and alternate 2. And I asked you, is there anything we can take out of the project? And you said no. Well, you don't even have to take anything out of this project because you already put alternates in the project. All you have to do is not take an alternate. So according to ODOT, who I now have all their emails, is telling the mayor as of probably last week, that the project can move forward. I don't know. The project can move forward with the base bid, which includes the resurfacing. Using the base bid, University Heights will not owe any additional funding. ODOT will be requisitioning $912,616 from escrow deposit, and the remaining will be released back to University Heights. The escrow deposit will also cover the first added alternate. Now, what are these alternates, you ask? First one, On Cedar Road at Thane, there is a mid-block crosswalk addition. Do you ever remember anybody talking about that? Ms. Blankfeld? Do you remember anybody talking about mid-block crosswalk in this project? Do you recall Mr. King discussing mid-block crosswalks in this project? Do you remember this? Before Monday? Do you remember? No, because it was never mentioned. But we approved the public funds to pay for something that was never even brought to our attention. Why was it an alternate? Well, Cedar Road, we share it with South Euclid, but on this portion of Cedar Road, we have both the north and south side. So I'm probably gonna take a guess that South Euclid doesn't want to pay for alternate one. Because they have no value and it's not their intersection. That's why the money had to be put aside. The way ODOT does things is it's additive alternates. You can't pick and choose which alternate you take. You take either the base bid, and if you want alternates, you go alternate 1, then alternate 2, 3, 4, etc. Alternate 2 is to do decorative concrete on the crosswalks. Does anybody remember hearing that we're putting $200,000 worth of decorative concrete in this project? Do you remember hearing anything about that? I don't recall. Now, I was a little upset. You misled us. You misrepresented the project. You misrepresented how the funds were going to be used to pay for the project. And I had to vote on that. And I support the project. But I didn't know I was voting on this thing. Why was this not in my packet? These are beautiful drawings that you guys did. These are beautiful. Why was this not in my packet? So we can discuss it, so we understand what's going on. What are you trying to just skirt through here? So, I look at the drawing set a little bit more. There's no name in the title block. I have no idea. There's an initial AWD, was the person who calculated it, it was checked by AKB, no firm name. So Sherry, who are these drawings?
Hovansic and Associates.
Okay, so Hovansic and Associates. I see their logos on the cover sheet, and I see your logos on the cover sheet. So what did Hovansic do and what did you do?
Oh, yeah, Mr. Chairman, Go ahead. I don't know where to start with my answers, but the question was asked to me, what did we do versus what Hovansic did? Stephen Hovansic and Associates prepared the entire set of plans. They do not have any traffic experts on their staff. So we did the wiring and the pedestrian push buttons for the mid-block crossing.
Who was the lead engineer? Because on the cover sheet, there's only one stamp, and it's on the cover sheet, and the stamp is smudged. I can't read the number, and I can't read the name of who stamped the drawings. Stamps belong on every sheet, and they're only on the cover, and it's smudged. So I can't even make out who stamped it. That's number one.
Andy Black, who stamped the plans, he's the city of South Euclid city engineer. And ODOT does not require every sheet to be stamped. They do require the title sheets to be stamped.
So now my next question is, if Hovansic's on this project, what was their contract amount? Right now.
I do know that I don't have it with me. I mean, we paid our share of that contract. We split it with them.
Who's we?
City University Heights.
Okay.
We had an agreement that was.
What was our contract?
I don't recall. It was 70,000.
I think it was around $80,000, Mr. Judy, but Mr. Kennedy's not here.
I don't remember ever approving a contract with Hovansic.
That was on, that's been on before.
There was an agreement that was signed and it came before council.
I don't remember, I don't recall seeing, did anybody recall seeing a contract for Hovansic? Did this go out for bid? Did this go through the QBS process? Was this competitively announced?
You know, Mr. Rock, you're asking a lot of compound questions here. Do you want Mr. Cheney to actually answer your question?
Yeah, I want an answer.
Well, then,
Was this-
then ask one question at a time and let Mr. Cheney answer that question.
Mr. Cheney, was this competitively bid?
Hold on, I'm talking, we will get your turn. Mr. Cheney, Go ahead and just answer the questions that Mr. Rock or other members of council asked you, and at the end, I will afford you the opportunity to fill in whatever you need.
Thank you, Mayor.
So, John, go ahead with your question.
It's Councilman Rock.
Thank you,
And-
Mr. Rock, please go ahead and ask.
Was this project competitively bid?
It was not.
Why?
The locals were paying for the engineering and it wasn't required to be. And
Not according to the ORC. 50,000 is the threshold. And you just said 74 was our share? ODOT is saying the actual,
I think the total was 80-some thousand.
well, ODOT is telling me the actual engineering costs were $182,480 for this project. And it's gonna go up because it's a bid bust, and it's based on construction costs.
That's not correct. I don't know what you're reading there, that is not
So
correct.
this is what I got from ODOT this morning.
I don't know what you're looking at.
Okay, so now, okay, so let's just say it's 80,000 for South Loop and 80,000 for University Heights
No, total.
total.
Yes.
Now, then we gotta get some money out of our escrow because we paid the 182 into escrow.
That's
We paid, no, listen,
That's for construction engineering, which hasn't happened yet, because they're gonna be doing.
that's just the
construction.
construction engineering.
Yes, and that's ODOT's fee. That's not our fees. That is.
Oh, no, we're on the hook for that. We have to pay the construction engineering fee. I had a long conversation with ODOT this morning.
I agree, but that's ODOT's fee. That's not OMASIC, that's not GPD, that's ODOT's.
Okay, so
fee
then-
To manage the project.
So who's going to be managing the project?
ODOT. ODOT is running the.
Okay, so they're charging us 182,000 for fees,
And we don't have a choice in it.
and then the design fee on top of that is 80,000. Not competitively bid.
In round numbers, that is correct. It didn't have to be because it was locally led. The locals could decide on the engineer, and we had a meeting over at South Euclid. The mayor was there, I was there, Andy Blackley was there, the city planners were at that meeting, we decided that the Romansky and Associates should do the design of the project. And I didn't disagree.
So let me ask you a question. Why is your logo on the cover sheet of the documents?
Because I just told you. They don't have traffic engineers, and in order to do that mid-block crossing, there was wiring and there was traffic, electrical items and things like that in there, which we have expertise in. So we designed that one little piece, which is the
The
mid-block
alternate.
crossing.
So you designed the alternate,
Alternate number one.
the one that we never heard about until Monday. So you are our city engineer. You recommend projects on behalf of the city and bring them before us. And then you award the projects, and in this case, you awarded it to Hovansik, and you awarded some to yourself for a project that we didn't even know about. You don't see a problem with that?
I disagree with your premises.
You stood up right there at the podium and told me this is just a resurfacing job.
It is research.
Plus all this, crosswalk decorative concrete.
You said yourself, and by the way, you didn't see that, you may have seen an engineer's estimate, but they do not share the bid tab. I don't know the actual numbers prepared, they won't share it with anybody.
I have
Tell me
the
they will,
totals. I have the
because I have
totals.
contacts and I know I can get it. If I can't, I can't. So don't tell me you saw the bid tab, because it's against their policies, they won't do it. You may have seen an engineer's estimate. And
I have
And
four
you just-
different construction companies. It was Park, it was
Yeah.
Roniak, it was from Shelley and from Chagrin Valley Paving.
and all you see is the.
And the title of it is bid results.
That's correct, that's the total amount bid. Everything is a unit price. This sheet here, and that's what I needed to see, the unit price for each one of these items. And then I can tell you how much exactly the alternates cost, whether it be the mid-block crossing or the decorative crosswalks. Because it's bid by the square yard, or it's bid by the linear feet of conduit that's in there, or the stanchions for the pet poles. I don't know what those numbers are. Yes, you are correct. You see the actual total cost, and I had that too. But that's not a.
So you know how to evaluate your project.
For you to say, because you added a couple of items like a mid-block crossing and a bump out, that it's not a resurfacing job. It is a resurfacing job. It's 95% resurfacing. And
Okay,
there are these other items added in there. You're correct.
What is
Other
the
items
cost
added-
value, since you have the cost estimate, and since you have the unit cost from your estimate, not from the actual bid tab,
I didn't
from
put
your
the estimate
estimate,
together.
what is the cost to do this intersection?
I don't have that with me,
What do you think? 200,000?
possibly. Yes.
Well, that's more than 5%.
But for you to say you haven't seen it before, okay, these items came from the NOACA TLCI study that was submitted to all council that you were all given.
It's
Right,
the
and
first time we ever
these
saw
were
this.
recommendations that were in there. The mid-block crossings on Warrenville Center Road were in there, the bump outs that we just applied for were in that study, and it's a study about this thick, and you were on council when it happened.
Then why didn't you tell us it was included in the project?
I would.
Why did you misrepresent the project, is what I'm asking.
I did not misrepresent the project, sir.
Councilman? I have some questions. Would you mind taking the floor?
I'll take a break.
And-
All right, Mr.
One other item. The recommended project includes both alternates. Okay? And that is why we came to you on Monday, because to do the recommended projects, we needed the $129,420. Right? If we were going to accept the project without the alternates, we did not need to be in front of you. We didn't need any money, which is why would I waste your time? So the recommended projects, and I sat at the meetings, all right, and both city planners sat at the meetings, and both mayors sat at the meetings, and they wanted these items in the project, right? And that's why it was in there, right? And that's the recommended project that I'm recommending to you, right? If you don't approve the dollar amount for it, then it doesn't get done.
Well, it's not going to get built.
That is
Alternate 2 will not get built.
all right, but that is a recommended project that Southwick wants, and they have their money in it, okay? And this administration wants, and what I'm recommending. And that's why I was here on Monday telling you that we need the extra dollars to get the project approved. Okay, now, these are recommendations by NOACA, all right, for safety. These are safety items, that's what they're for.
Decorative concrete safer.
Point of order.
Yes.
I have the floor seated to the question. If Mr. Cooney would like to respond to Mr. Roth's question.
Yeah, last question for right now. Is decorative concrete safer?
There is an element where you can see it better, yes, it is safer, because it's more, it stands out more to both the.
Then why didn't you put decorative concrete on Thane in alternate 1? That crosses Cedar Road, and not even where there's a traffic light. Why didn't we put decorative concrete there then? That's painted lines.
I can't answer that question. I didn't design the plans.
Mayor? Yes, I think, Mr. Rocker.
I'll take it right now.
Okay, Mr. Gould, you may have.
I just want to make sure I understand the content of the alternates. On the spreadsheet, there's, as was explained, there's a area that talks, the description on the right-hand corner, or right side, excuse me, of the page. And it goes down with a heading of traffic control, and then one of maintenance of traffic, and then incidentals. And then there's a heading of additive alternate 1. Is everything that's above additive alternate 1 included in the base bid?
Yes, it is.
And then for additive alternate 1, that goes down until the heading of additive alternate 2. And so additive alternate 2 includes everything in the base bid and then additive alternate 1.
I guess I don't understand the question. You know, all additive alternate 1 is.
Well, Mr. Cheney, if you don't understand the question, Mr. Gould, will you please explain your question? I don't want there to be any confusion as to what it is Mr. Cheney's answering.
Additive alternate 1
Correct.
is everything under the heading additive alternate 1. Is that correct? Until you get to additive alternate 2?
Correct.
And in order to select additive alternate 1, you must do the base project as well.
That's correct, yes.
And then additive alternate 2, is that only the item under additive alternate 2?
There's only one item there, that is correct.
And in order to add additive alternate 2, you need to do both the base project and additive 1.
According to ODOT's rules, yes. That's the rules it gives.
And so the only item that is an additive alternate 2 is decorative concrete crosswalk.
Correct.
I guess my concern comes in because, you know, we had a conversation about additional background information on the first item that was on the agenda yesterday. When we talked about the fees being passed through to different development projects and how there were certain items that would be helpful to council to have as background information. And on this one, I think you know, when I ask questions, I know that Vice Mayor Weiss asked clearly, is this mandatory twice? Do we have to do this additional $129,000? And the response there was yes. And then I asked, are there any additions or alternatives, options that could be taken out that would lower the price? And your response was that you had to do the analysis that Mr. Rock was referencing, and that there, you know, I said, so there's nothing we can just take out, and you said that's correct. And you received this March 18th, 2022 email from ODOT?
Correct.
And is your understanding from the options that are available here that if there was, basically they presented us with three options, A, B, and C in this email. A being just the base price, is that right?
Mhm.
And under the base price, we would receive a refund of our escrow dollars of approximately $100,000.
Correct.
And if we did the base level and added an alternate one, then we would have all of those things completed, and we would also receive a refund of approximately $100,000 from our escrow account.
That's correct.
And the base option and additive alternate one included all of the bus pads
Yes,
and all of the bump outs,
yes,
the reconfiguration of Washington Boulevard with the corners extended into the intersection for safety,
yes, it does.
the painted intersections, crosswalks,
That's correct.
and the other intersection at Fame.
If you take alternate one, yes.
Yes, with alternate one, so that's included in that.
That's the mid-block crossing, the rapid flashing beacon lights, yes.
And the third option that they provided us with C was for the $129,000 additional cost. And we would have to put that into the escrow account.
That's correct.
And that's what you were approaching council about on Monday.
That's correct, yes. And because it needed more funds for council to approve. The other two options, I wouldn't have been here, because we didn't need any more funds.
And that $129,000 is for nothing other than decorative concrete crosswalks, right?
In the two intersections, that is correct.
And so I think that's what's most concerning to me, is that when I ask you if there are things that we can remove to lower our costs, or when the vice mayor asks, is this a mandatory fee, or can we choose not to do it? I would expect your response to those questions to be, you can get all the lights, all the safety, all the crosswalks, all the reconfiguration, all of the repaving, all of the potholes, most of the things except for decorative concrete that NOACA wanted, and you'd be able to proceed, get a $100,000 refund to the city accounts from the escrow that we put in, and that's not what you said.
Mr. Gould, the questions as you paraphrased them, that you said that you and Mrs. Weiss asked, are not what you said on the record. And you have misstated the questions that you asked Mr. Cheney. And anybody can go back and play that video as I did today. And hear the questions that you asked, and those aren't the questions you asked.
Well, they are the questions that I
Maybe you have those questions now, or maybe that's what you meant to ask, but that's not what you asked Mr. Cheney, and Mr. Cheney answered the question that was put before him.
I have the minutes right here. Mrs. Thomas typed them up. Mrs. Weiss asked if it was mandatory to place the requested extra funding. Because from the mayor's explanation, it did not sound mandatory. It was
Well,
more of an ask.
These are
There's another
unofficial
one.
minutes at this point, and I've watched the video. I've not read Mrs. Thomas's draft minutes.
Well, Mayor, first of all, I appreciate you correcting. If there's a quotation that you'd like to share that's different, you certainly can. These are the questions that were asked. I reviewed the items in detail. And Ms. Weiss not only asked whether or not the funding was mandatory once, but she did twice, because the initial response was non-responsive to the question of whether or not the items were required. I'm going to return to my line of questioning because I have the floor.
You're welcome to, but I'm noting for the record that you misstated those questions, and anybody can go back and watch the video and see what was actually asked and stated. And I am the chair of this meeting, and I will let you know when you may resume.
I
Now,
have
resume, Mr.
order at all. You are interrupting and it's out of order.
Mr. Gould, I have the gavel, and I'm the mayor, and I run this meeting.
Then I'll make a motion to overrule the mayor as we can by our rules to stop interrupting me while I have the floor to ask questions of Mr. Chin.
I'm gonna rule that it's dilatory, and you can go ahead and ask Mr. Chin.
I've made a motion and it's on the floor. Is there a second to my motion? To overrule the mayor?
I'll second.
There's now a motion and a second. Our rules allow us to overrule the mayor as chair of the committee or chair of the council meeting. I know the council.
To overrule the mayor.
Yeah, this particular motion is being made to disrupt proceedings, and it is within the prerogative of the chair to view that motion as dilatory, and I'm not going to allow it. If you want to ask.
Our charter allows me
You
to
can
make
make
the
a motion.
motion to overrule you, and I'm under the.
Please show me where in the charter.
Certainly. Mr. McCollum, will you have a copy of the charter with us? Please look for the section on the chair of the meeting.
And while we're waiting, Mr. Gold, your comment was on page 7, saying,
Mr. Rock, we are waiting now for a review from the moderator there. You do not have the floor.
It's Article 5, Section 4B. General powers and duties of the legislature. The mayor shall preside at all meetings of the council and shall have the power to veto as specified in Article 3, Section 7 of this charter. The directors of all departments established by this charter or by ordinance also shall be entitled to seats in the council. Neither the mayor or any director of any department shall have a vote in the council. But the mayor shall have the right to introduce ordinances and take part in the discussion of all matters coming before the council. The directors of departments shall be entitled to take part in all discussions in the council related to their respective departments. I don't think it particularly addresses that issue. What I don't have recall of at the tips of my fingers is whether there's a provision in Robert's rules that governs this, because there is a provision in our charter that indicates that parliamentary procedure is governed by Robert's Rules of Order.
For the purposes of moving on with the meeting, I'll withdraw my motion and reintroduce it if needed if I find the section citing the authorities in there.
Well, thank you, Mr. Goldberg. If you kindly act with the decorum and dignity afforded in this body, it shouldn't be an issue. Please proceed. You have the floor.
So again, that's my concern, is that when asked the questions regarding whether or not the charges were mandatory and whether or not the $129,000 needed to be paid in order to go forward with the project, your response was that it did. And if we were notified, hey, this is not killing the Cedar Road project, this is removing stamped concrete from the Cedar Road project, I think I would have had a different, feeling at the end of the meeting. Is there something that I'm not aware of that would have stopped the ability for the project to go forward without decorative stamped concrete in crosswalks?
No, there's nothing there that we're. And I interpreted the question from Mrs. Boyce that is the dollars amount, is it mandatory? Yes, it's mandatory for the recommended project. The recommended project, I sat in meetings with both mayors and both city planners, and they made the decision to put these items in the plans, and we designed the plans and we put them in there. And at the time, before the war in Europe and the inflation and everything, we had enough dollars to do it, and it was in there. We did not know what these bids were going to come in at. Okay? But the recommended project is with all of these items in there, and it's still 95% of the service job, and that's what it is, right? And the dollars that went up are on the asphalt side, not on the concrete side. I can tell you that. And when you ask the question, again, I would not have even wasted time and been in front of you on the agenda had we decided not to do the alternates. You know how long we took arguing about this, or talking about this subject at the meeting. You guys have better things to do than talk for 20 minutes about Cedar Road. All right? But we had a recommended project that both cities supported and both city planners supported. And that's what I came to for. So the answer is, for this project to go forward, the way it's recommended, the way it's designed, yeah, it was mandatory to put that in there. And that was why my response was what it was.
Thank you for the explanation. And I think it helps me understand a little more, when you talked about the asphalt portion, back, I believe it was in January, that's when you had made a certain estimate to the state, right?
Well, we did this job back in June. It was 1.83 million or something like that. And then the state came back before they sent it out for bids and said, look, prices are going up. This is what we're hearing. And they asked us for 25% more money.
And that was specifically for the asphalt, lack of trucks, those sort of things.
Fuel prices, asphalt, trucking, labor, whatever, yes, right.
And I think what I was left with at the end of that meeting was that, or at the end of our Monday meeting, was that this was all part of the same thing, that this is an increase in costs from asphalt, the war in Ukraine, these sort of things, when in fact it was just decorative concrete. And so, and please, it's not just you, it was also the mayor who at the end of the meeting said, well, I guess we just killed the Cedar Road project. So it was, I think, the totality of responses from you and the mayor that led me to believe that if we didn't proceed with this project, with $129,000, that it would be a death knell to the entire project. I appreciate the explanations.
And I apologize for the misunderstanding.
Mr. McConnell.
I note, just for the record, that members of the body do have the right to make a motion to object to procedure or personal affront. I think that's perhaps analogous to the motion you're making.
Sure, no, there's something in our actual, that's okay, this doesn't matter at this point.
Mayor?
Yes, Mrs. Weiss here.
So, Mr. Tooney, thank you for the clarifications, and I want to thank Mr. Rock and Mr. Poole for their comments as well. I think council as a whole, I know council as a whole wants this project to go forward. I don't believe that we were aware of additive alternate 2 versus additive alternate 1. We're not versed in that. We didn't have this in front of us. We didn't have this email in front of us. I think that since additive alternate 1 is part of the base program and we would not have to fund another $129,000, I think it would be appropriate to possibly take another vote because this project would not be dead without additive alternate 2. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman?
If you could build a project without alternate 2, that's correct.
So I would like to make a motion to go forward with.
Ma'am, I'd like to.
Yes, I don't think you're.
Before the motion.
Oh, sure, okay.
I'm a bit disappointed that we're having this conversation now, as opposed to all the other times this project has been approved. To my knowledge, nothing in the scope of the project has changed. This was approved last year. It was approved in our budget. The decorative concrete that you're talking about, it's all in the public. It was in the mayor's budget. It was highlighted on our city website. There should not be any surprises here. As far as whether this is a new job versus all these other extras, I don't know. I see a good project here. I see a project that not only serves commerce, people, drivers, but it's recognizing pedestrians are users of the road as well. Most vulnerable users. We designed this project with partners. We've worked with the county, we've worked with NOACA, and most importantly, we've worked with the city of South Euclid. So we share a large portion of the project with them. And it wasn't until Monday night that we started trying to dissect the totality of the project. I'm just very, very concerned that we're having this discussion now, that we had it Monday night, that we're having it now. We're concerned about the cost. I know there were concerns about the cost in our budget. Why did it go up? Why didn't people ask for that? It was approved in the budget without. I'm really disappointed that we're having this discussion. I know we have a representative of South Euclid here, and Mr. Hubert Benjamin. He worked very hard to protect this project. Even tried to bring more dollars to the table today, which I understand were turned down by other members of council. So,
Mr. King, I'm happy to address that too. Several things first. Well, thank you, Mr. Benjamin, for being here. Mr. Benjamin is part of the team that's been working on this for the last 3 years. And I'm taking meetings in South Euclid with Mr. Benjamin, with Mr. Cheney, with other personnel at South Euclid, with Brendan Zach, with Susan Drucker, with numerous people. And you know, drawings have been available. If people haven't looked at them, I can't help that. But what I can say is that Mr. Benjamin, I know, was lobbying members of our council, urging that reconsideration be had, that this was a project that NOACA, when NOACA funded this project, they contemplated all portions, both all adults. And Mr. Cheney, before I continue, would you please explain for the record why ODOT does adults in projects like this?
Because this is a resurfacing job, and in a normal resurfacing job, they don't do these items, these elements of work, so they separate them out. And that's why they're alternate 1 and alternate 2. You know, they do pavement, they do curbs, they do striping, and redo the signage. We're redoing signage all along Cedar Road because the signs are outdated. They don't meet new reflectivity rules that we have. So, and so they put them in as alternate 1 and alternate 2. And again, their and Mr. Rock is correct. Their dollar amounts are capped. And anything above that cap, if it happens to be an alternate 1 or 2, the locals have to pick that up because that was their choice to put that in. And it was their choice to put that in. And that's why they're split out that way. And that's why we had to come back for small money.
But when NOACA chose to fund this project, they were looking at the entire project, including the alternates, and their bid is alternates because of ODOT regulation.
That is correct. Yeah. And, right. NOACA said there's certainly federally eligible items of work. So meaning if it's some items like planting trees or something like that wouldn't be for eligible on all projects. These items, even though they're not servicing items, are eligible for federal dollars.
Right. And when they did, and when they awarded a $1.4 million award on this project, it wasn't just a resurfacing project, it was a resurfacing project with these additional elements, correct?
That's correct.
So continuing. talking with Grace Galucci, talking with NOACA, she's the executive director of NOACA, talking with Mr. Benjamin over at South Euclid. The position of NOACA, the position of South Euclid, and in fact, the position of University Heights working with them has been, this is the project, that the project includes all these parts and always has. These weren't added on later. These were always part of this project. That's not what ran up the cost. The cost went up on the entire project for all the factors, Mr. Cheney, that you've described. And also, getting back to the point that Mr. King raised, Mr. Benjamin contacted Mr. King because, or not, excuse me, not Mr. King. Mr. Benjamin contacted our county council person, Cheryl Stevens, about county ARPA money. Every county council person has some ARPA money to distribute to various communities. I have been working with county council person Stevens about possible county ARPA funded projects here in University Heights. None have actually been selected yet, so there's been no announcement yet of those. But Mr. Benjamin did approach county council person Stevens about, for South Euclid's sake, but also in University Heights, because he works for South Euclid, whether she'd be willing to commit the $420 difference in county ARPA money. And he was able to secure that commitment from Councilperson Stevens. And then, as I understand, Councilperson Stevens met with two of our council people, Councilperson Gould and Vice Mayor Weiss, who, as I understand, somehow represented to her on behalf of the city that we were rejecting that offer for that purpose. I have also spoken with Councilperson Stevens and revived the offer and let her know that yes, the city of University Heights is interested. We are interested in completing the project as envisioned by NOACA, as envisioned by South Euclid, as envisioned by University Heights. And we would be happy to take from the county, through her generosity and the county's generosity, the $129,420 necessary to bridge the gap here and take the lowest bid on the project as it was always conceived. Members of our council should not be rejecting offers on behalf of the city. You have no authority to do that. And you also have no authority to call ODOT and obtain extensions. That is an administrative function. That is something, an extension that we were seeking for responding to this bid was something I was working on with Mr. Cheney. Then I get an email CC that Mr. Gould had contacted ODOT and that ODOT had provided an extension until 6:30 tomorrow morning for us to get a response so that we could have this meeting. That isn't something administration asked for. And while we're all busy whipping out our copies of the charter, the chief executive and chief administrative officer of the city is the mayor. And the executive administrative functions of the charter of the city are in the mayor's office. And while the mayor can delegate that from time to time, at no time did I ever delegate that authority to Mr. Gould to contact ODOT and begin negotiating. Mr. Gould, you have no right to usurp the authority of the mayor's office. And Mr. McConville, I would like a brief prepared, a memo prepared on what the remedies are and what can be done about council members who contact outside agencies and begin negotiating on behalf of the city when that is the administration's job.
Mayor, may I say something?
I'm not done yet. I would note that we've had numerous instances where this council has taken exception to the conduct or the performance of certain employees of this city. We have the ability to go into executive session to have those discussions. I note that this particular item, this special meeting, was not noticed to go into executive session to have a discussion with Mr. Cheney if this council had a question about his performance. Mr. Cheney has served this city for decades. You can go back in the minutes from the 90s and see that every name in those minutes is different than anybody who's here, except for Mr. Cheney. He has served with distinction and honorably here in the city of University Heights. Over the course of the past year, we have publicly criticized various employees, various public officials. And it's been disgraceful. And here we are doing it again. We did it to Mrs. Thomas. We did it to Stephanie Scalise. We did it to Wayne Weiser. And now we're doing it to Joe Cheney. It's disgusting. It's disgraceful. And it's shameful. If you have a question, an issue with Mr. Cheney's performance, and if you wanted to call a meeting for it, we should have gone into executive session to do that, instead of delivering a public flogging. Instead of tanning his hide so you can wear it covered your backsides with a terrible decision you made 2 nights ago to reject this project. This is my vote. You may have it.
Thank you, and I would like to say first that I choose that you will not interrupt me when I'm speaking. Thank you. So to answer Mr. King's question, I believe that council is dissecting, to use your word, the project as we did Monday night and are further doing this evening, because additional funds were being asked that were not what was the original budgeted amount. We were being asked for an additional $129,420, which, as you know, the budget, we had to scrape and scramble to really get it as close to a budget, a balanced budget, which everybody knows what that is. And it's hard to do with a city our size when we are not a rich community. So that is why council dissects. It is our job to question. We have power of purse. We are the legislative body. And so as a new member of council, it's a learning experience, but you and I and every member of this council have that power, and it is our responsibility to do that. As far as discussions going on with esteemed members of other communities regarding the project that were not shared with council, because no one communicates with us, except possibly occasionally an email from the mayor's assistant. So we would have no way of knowing that there was all this other extraneous conversation going on, or with our county council representative, Ms. Stevens, that there would be funds to cover this, so that we wouldn't have to try and amend our budget and cut something else beyond what we've already cut. All of this, we shouldn't have to guess. We shouldn't have to come looking and begging at the mayor's office to look at documents for backup to things that we are being asked to legislatively approve. That should have been shared with us all along in a regular flow of respectful communication, collaborative communication from our administrative employees. So yes, that is why we're having this discussion. And I would rather have a spirited discussion and Q&A with our employees, because I would like to see everything above board. So I have no problem with this evening, other than the tone of it has frequently slipped into being a name calling or someone chiding someone as though we are penitent children, which we are not.
Mayor? Are you finished, Mrs. Klein?
I am, thank you.
Mr. Gould?
I wanted to address a couple of the things that you said about my actions on behalf of the city. I need no permission from you to act in my capacity as a city council person. I don't know what you've been told or who you've been told it by. I did call ODOT. I am absolutely able to call ODOT and ask questions as a city council person. I identified myself to our project manager on this case, Ms. Lori Scaramucci, and asked her when their acceptance committee would be meeting so that I would understand how much time we had to call this special meeting. That was after speaking with Ms. Wise. It was then when she informed me that they would be meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. And that if we let them know anytime before then, that we would be proceeding with either the base level or the base level of alternate 1, or the base level of alternate 1 and alternate 2, that that committee would be able to act within the 7-day period established by the federal government to accept bids. I at no time requested an extension. I simply asked, and if, as you've characterized this email, it said that Mr. Gould called, and that the state has provided an extension. I did not ask for extensions. I have no authority to act on behalf of the city, as you've already highlighted. You are the only person that can accept this bid. But what I did want to understand is whether or not what you said was truthful regarding the death of the deal. I was led to believe by your comments at the meeting on Monday that the deal was dead. We would have no repaving. Citizens would be calling in, continuing to call in about the state of the roads, that we wouldn't have the bump outs, that we wouldn't have the bus packs. And that may not have been what your intention was, but that was what the impression that I was left with at the end of the meeting. So I called the state to understand that position. Now, yesterday evening at about 8 o'clock, based on the call, I'm sorry, sir, what was your name again? Keith Benjamin. Mr. Benjamin serves on the board of Bratnall?
I'm Bratnall Council President,
Yes.
so I feel your pain.
So Mr. Benjamin serves on Bratnall Council as Bratnall Council President. You also work with the city of South Euclid, and your mayor is on vacation right now, and you've been entrusted with delivering this project to the city of South Euclid. And as it was explained to you, the project was dead because of a vote of council.
I knew that there were issues with the additional $129,000.
So I've known Cheryl Stevens since I was a child. She bought my childhood home, and I have established a relationship with her. I also don't need your permission to speak to our county council person or my friend. And I assure you that I do not accept or to reject, sign contracts, or do any of that for the city. Neither can you appropriate ARPA dollars. That is the work of this body. And therefore I invited our council president to, or excuse me, our vice mayor, to meet with my friend and our county council person, Cheryl Stevens. We had a conversation about our recent council retreat and the priorities that our council set, including how we would address issues which universally seem to be of a concern to council in the Jackson neighborhood, and whether or not we thought that a couple's crosswalks of decorative stamped concrete met those priorities. I cannot control whether or not a county council person makes an official offer of her funds to the city of University Heights. I can only state what my vote would be regarding stamped decorative concrete in sidewalks, and whether or not I felt that that was an appropriate use of $129,000. We also talked about additional requests for $600,000 that may be committed to the city of University Heights for our sewers that you talked to her about. We also talked to her about up to another $500,000 of funding for other priorities that council has. So we had a universal conversation, and I want you to know that I would not reject an offer of something on behalf of the city if there was such a thing. I can't do that. B, County Councilwoman Cheryl Stevens doesn't listen to one council individual. If she wanted to give us that money and have us vote on it, she would do that. She's not controlled by me or any conversation that I have. She's an independent thinker, an independent woman, and I trust her implicitly. And for me, as I've explained, my concerns were about what the impression that I was left with at the end of the meeting. I don't share Councilman Rock's concerns regarding the scope of the project. That's not where my concerns lie. My concerns lie that at the end of the meeting, based on your comments and Mr. Chuny's comments, my understanding was that the only choice I had was to extend another $129,000 or leave a Cedar Road with potholes in it and other issues. It didn't feel right. And that's why I voted the way I did. And that's why I called the state, because I didn't trust what I was understanding to be true. And when I called the state, they told me that what my understanding was in fact not true. They sent me this March 18th, 2022 email, which clearly states that there are the three options I've already outlined. They told me that although they had set a deadline of Wednesday at 11 a.m., that was not a deadline that was set in stone, that we could still act within the 7 days. And to just explain that point a little further, the federal government requires that a bid be accepted by a city within 7 days of the time that the bid is returned. I believe was the time frame. It is a 7-day period. If after that 7-day period, the bid is not accepted, if it is extended in some way, I understood Mr. Chuny or you might be contacting them for an extended extension, that the bid is still valid. We can still accept it, but the low bidder has the opportunity to walk away from that bid. So the only way to lock in the low bid, which was about a difference of approximately $30,000 between the low bid of PERC and the next highest bidder, that we would have to act within 7 days. And with everything that has happened, with the war, with the increase in oil, with the problems that we've had with this project increasing in the dollar amounts, I did not want to even risk that we would not have the opportunity to have this conversation on the record prior to that 7 days elapsing. Now, Ms. Deramucci also told me that she has never in her professional career seen the lowest bidder walk away. So if we had extended it, if that was something the administration called up and said, I'm not doing this, I'm not signing this, I'm waiting until May, until, you know, the meeting of NOACA is had, and, you know, I'm going to come back to council and try to convince them of this $129,000. But I will say for myself, as I've said to both of you, I felt misled. I felt like I did not have full information. And based on that, I will not be voting for the $129,000 in decorative concrete crosswalks. I believe that Ms. Weiss had a motion, and unless there's additional discussion on it.
I do have one more additional point, if I may, Mayor.
Go ahead, Mr. Rowe.
So just to clarify a few points, Mr. King, you asked why I didn't ask for these drawings before. But I didn't think I had to. I trusted the administration, I trusted our city engineer, I trusted our mayor that they were making decisions, sound decisions. They got the city. Fool me once. This will never happen again. I want to see drawings, specifications, every piece of backup possible before we spend any form of public funds on public spaces that includes right of way, infrastructure, buildings. That's number one. Number two, during the retreat, we made a recommendation that we start an infrastructure and building committee, similar to what an architecture review board would review infrastructure projects and building projects that the city is a partner in on city land, on any city property, so that council, I'm not going to be here forever, I'm an architect, I'm not going to be here forever, but so council can understand what we're actually getting for $2.5 million. So that is something you'll see soon. And then just one other thing, I have a question for the law director regarding contracts at above $50,000. Is University Heights and South Euclid exempt from that rule, as I heard earlier? Or does the rule still apply to University Heights that contracts over $50,000 have to be competitively bid?
That is law, but that is not what our share was. And we had entered into an agreement with the city of South Euclid that council had approved. I think last year, I don't think it was in 2020, I think it was last year. Although the councilman's me.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't want to speak out of.
Yeah, Mr. Benjamin, because we're recording, if you could take one of the microphones, please. Or Kelly, thank you.
So I can't speak for, first of all, thank you. I didn't
Thank you
need
for being here today.
to speak tonight. I know that South Euclid passed a resolution in July of 2020 to enter into an agreement with University Heights to share proportionate costs and engineering services associated with the Cedar Road resurfacing project. That's when that was passed by our city council on July 13th, 2020. I don't know when University Heights would have considered and passed that. I don't have that information. I'll just add a couple of quick comments. And I've worked for cities for 30 years. South Euclid, Cleveland Heights, Lakewood. I was the first director of the First Suburbs Consortium. And now I'm a councilman in Brattleboro. So I see both sides. Believe me, I get it. And you're doing your due diligence and you're asking the questions and you're doing what you need to do as city council people elected by the citizens. And by the way, I grew up in University Heights. I spent 22 years here. My parents had lived on South Belvoir for 54 years and they're still there. So this is an interesting project because it's not just a University Heights project. It's also a South Euclid project. You have a partner here, and we're paying 30% of the bill for this project. And we've already sold our notes, and we're paying interest, and we need to move forward and get these projects done. The bids, like all construction bids during these challenging times, came in over budget. We know that, we understand that. And we were left with this one issue to do what NOACA has always recommended and advised, to take into account streetscape, that our streets are now public places. They are public places. They are not just for vehicular traffic. They are multimodal roadways for public transit, for bicyclists, and for pedestrians. And that's where some of these additional elements, like decorative crosswalks, and maybe we should stop using the word decorative to describe them because it makes it look like we're just doing it because they look good. That's not the point. But we know that at the end of the day, the bids came in at $129,000 more to include all of these elements. If we had done this project last year, and I think your engineer, Mr. Chin, stated that if this project was done when originally bid last year, all of these elements would have been included. And it's just unfortunate that that construction costs had risen so much in the last year. But because we're in a partnership, South Euclid and University Heights, we're in this together. I went forward, beginning yesterday, to use my relationship. And by the way, I've known Cheryl Stevens for over 30 years. She's a dear friend and colleague. I've been her in the past her campaign treasurer. She interviewed me for my very first job in Cleveland Heights when I was just a lowly grant writer 30 years ago. But I used my relationship. South Euclid did. I went to bat for University Heights to see if we could come up with that additional $129,000 so that we can move this project forward. And by the way, the $129,000 is not just South Euclid, it's not just University Heights. 30% of that $129,000 would be paid for by South I understand all of the points that you brought forward tonight. But, you know, I think I went out of my way to come up with the funds, County Councilperson Stevens, knowing the good people that are here at University Heights and knowing how hard that we worked in South Euclid with Mayor Wheelo and all our members of council. And I need to go back to them on Monday and explain the outcome of what happened here tonight. You know, I hope that with County Councilperson Stevens' offer of this $129,000, that we could move forward. University Heights and South Euclid could save the additional value taxpayer dollars that would have had to have been spent, and that we could move forward tonight. And I understand all of your points of view. I respect all of them, but I would ask you to please consider moving forward with this project, knowing that you'll have these additional grant dollars from our point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could have the floor.
Yes.
I did not get a chance to really answer Mr. Rock's question.
I wasn't done with my testimony, but go ahead.
So the point that I was getting to was that the city did enter into a contract with the city of South Dakota that was approved by council to share the engineering costs of Levancic. The larger point relating to contracts over a certain dollar threshold, whether it's the state law 50,000 or the city's law 15, is not interpreted to apply to contracts that relate to professional services. Municipalities do have the ability to kind of pick and choose their own vendors for professional services. So you don't, for example, have to seek public bidding in connection with hiring legal counsel. My interpretation has always been that the same thing would apply to engineering services because they are professional services.
Mr. McConville, I could ask that you refer to ORC 153.71, which refers to professional firms, professional services firms. Any public authority planning to contract for professional design services or design build services may adopt, amend, or rescind rules in accordance with Chapter 119 of the Ohio Revised Code, implement Section 153.66, 153.70 of the Ohio Revised Code, Section 153.66 to 153.70 of the Ohio Revised Code do not apply to either of the following. A project with an estimated professional design fee less than $50,000. The following conditions of that. And it goes on to 3 different bullets here. So I would ask that.
Yeah. Mr. Rodriguez? Or did you have something?
The only thing I just want to say as my closing remark is I believe in partnerships, Mr. King, you're right. We have a very good partnership with NOACA, we have a partnership with South Euclid, our neighbors here. One partner that was missing in this entire process was the person with the purse, the checkbook. Not all of the process, we're not told about any of the design. So we were left out of the process, but we were expecting to pass an ordinance for the taxpayers to foot the bill for something we knew nothing about. Rest my case.
Mayor. One moment, Mr. Conville, did you have something that you wanted to say with regard to the interpretation of the law?
No, I'll take a look at that section and respond.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Mr. King, you had something?
I just wanted to repeat that this project has been approved several times already by council. There wasn't an issue until Monday. We're changing the scope of the project that all our partners agreed to. I don't feel right doing that at the last moment. We're doing this over $87,000 difference. This is a multi-million-dollar, multi-agency project. It's a very large sum of money.
in the scope of all of this. I know that you've said that you are working with NOACA to get more funds. Mr. Benjamin went to the mat for us to get more funds. I think that turning back this project at this last moment just feels penny wise, pound foolish. That's it.
Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. King. Mrs. Flynn.
I think you're right, Mr. King, in that everybody agrees that it is an important project. And all of the components are important. And that we all recognize and appreciate all of the different professional and personal relationships that have come together to make it move forward. The issue lied Monday evening with the fact that we were being asked for more money beyond what had been approved, without any backup. Now having Ms. Stevens gone to the mat, as you say, and Mr. Benjamin, to come up with those funds that we would have had to somehow claw out of a budget that was already very stretched, puts a different color on it. I agree with you. But that was not the case Monday evening. Or it wouldn't, if it were no different, it wouldn't have been on the agenda. The additional 121,000. So it wouldn't have been on the agenda if it wasn't any different.
May I respond?
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. King.
Yes.
Go ahead.
We have many different remedies to this.
I agree.
$86,000.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Please don't interrupt the speaker. Mr. King, please go ahead.
We could have, as the mayor stated, was already looking for funds from the WACA. We could have used those. We could have taken it out of another project. I don't think that Monday night was the time to open up the books on this project when it had been approved several times. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. King. Mr. Rock.
Just want to caution, it's not $86,000 between alternate 1 and alternate 2 from the bidder. It's a difference of $200,000. $129,000 that we have to put into escrow to make the project go with all the alternates. If we choose not to go with alternate 2, we get money back. But to add that to the cost of putting money in, it's a $200,000 difference.
Mayor?
Yes, Mrs. White.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Benjamin coming here. We do value this partnership, and I appreciate you taking that time to speak on South Euclid's behalf. Anyone who knows me knows that I actually hear people when they listen, and I want to do the right thing for the residents. I don't want to just do it for myself. It's never about me. I was elected for the constituents, not for myself. You know, I'm the one who called this meeting to get this passed. I just want everybody to remember that we want this to pass. That's why I called this special meeting. I do have to say though, as Mr. King mentioned, yes, we passed this, but I know I personally was never aware of these alternates. And that, it's not on me. I never saw this. Yes, I might have seen a drawing. There was never an explanation of an alternate. I also have to say that $186,000 or whatever, that's not insignificant to our budget. South Euclid might be in a different operating space than we are, but that's not an insignificant amount to our budget. However, the other point that I do want to make is, I hope the county comes through. I hope NOACA comes through. We don't have assurances yet. With all of that said, though, I feel that this project should be approved as is, even with the additive alternate 2, because of our partnership, because of everything that was said here. I do feel, and I want it stated on the record that council was not advised properly about these alternatives. And that has to change going forward. But again, we are here for our constituents, not for grievances that we have with possible misinterpretations or possible people who have misled us. So I am going to make a motion that this project, excuse me.
Can I interrupt for one moment before you make that motion? Because I think the motion is substantially similar to what was on the agenda the other night, if I'm hearing you correctly. What we first need to do is entertain a motion for reconsideration, which must be made by someone who voted no. So if we can entertain that motion first and then entertain Mrs. Weiss's motion.
Before we move on with that, I just, Mayor. Yes. Before we move on with that, you talked about NOACA funds. I know that they are a board, and I assume that you talked about that would be a short thing, Vice Mayor. I just want to make sure that the money that we discussed regarding ARPA is still on the table. Would council please recess for just a moment? We could stay in our seats. I'll just be a moment. I'd like to make a motion to recess for approximately a minute or two. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion to take a 5-minute recess, so let's just say. And there's a second. Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Glenville,
Aye.
Mr. Rock,
Aye.
Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Aye.
Should I call the other
Yes, we should
persons?
call Mrs. Sacks.
Mrs. Sacks,
Aye.
Mr. Cooney.
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. We recess for 5 minutes.
Not exclusive, not exclusive of the other items we just discussed. Oh, yeah. Okay. That's an impression.
Yeah. Yeah. He's been around. Oh, Helen Moss. Helen Moss, yes, yes.
Wait, hold that.
Oh, you missed this, well, no, this edition may have been a replacement. Replacement did Coventry, Roxborough, Fairfax, and you may have done it. Oh, yeah. Oh,
You have to hit the whole 5 minutes.
No, there's no objection.
No objection. Motion to reconvene there.
Okay, we have a motion to enter recess and reconvene by Mr. Cool. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Weiss. Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Mrs. Glenville,
She's there.
Oh, I didn't hear you. You said my name? Aye.
Mrs. Glenville,
Aye.
Mr. Rock,
Aye.
Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Gould,
Aye.
Mr. Cooney,
Oh, it's to reconvene.
Yeah.
Mr. King.
Aye.
Looks like he's there.
Well, we have,
Yeah.
I mean, is Mr. Cooney there? I don't, if he stepped away because he's already 5 minutes, I don't want to proceed without.
The screen still has him up.
The screen is up. I don't see
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, good. Mr.
Sorry.
Cooney, we had a motion to reconvene just slightly early. Mrs. Thomas called your name. Do you have a response?
Yes, aye.
Great, thank you. Mayor? Yes, Mr. Gould. We're back in regular session, Mr. Gould.
Thank you, sir. You know, I wanted to make sure we still had the $129,000 from County Councilperson Stevens, and we do. You know, when I listened to what was said, at Monday's meeting, my initial response was really being upset. As I learned more about what happened for the reasons I've already put on the record, but as Vice Mayor White said, I don't want to harm our partnership or harm the community. While I may not value, you know, decorative stamped concrete, as has been explained tonight, there's a little bit more to it than its decoration. We're going to need to change that. It's not good. And I will say that I think the discussions that we've had surrounding this, the additional money that I discussed there, the money that could come from ARPA money, the projects that are happening in the city. If there is something that I need to do as a council person to work more collaboratively with you, to get information that is full and complete, I don't know what that is. I want to do it because I am certain that if the individuals who are able to, through our collective power, and it comes from, you know, South Euclid, it comes from the relationships we had, but I think it also comes from you sending up the alarm to, you know, your partners saying, hey, I need help with $129,000. And now we have additional money now that we didn't have on the table on Monday. I think that there's a lot that we can work together on. And if we put our efforts towards that collaboration rather than fighting against each other, I am certain that we will be able to do great things for University Heights and continue to do projects that are of this scale. And I know that we are aware that several of those things are forthcoming. That's all I wanted to say on that matter. Again, I guess I'll also make a motion since I was a no to reconsider.
Very good, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gould. We have a motion by Mr. Gould to reconsider the motion to approve an additional $129,420 to be placed in escrow for the Kyle Cedar Road resurfacing project. Is there a second?
Should be an emergency, correct?
I don't think that's.
This is just a motion to reconsider, so, and we're doing this by motion, which is a quirk of our charter, so it will become effective immediately.
Mayor, I'll second that
Very good.
for all of the reasons that Mr. Gould so eloquently stated.
So help me understand the motion.
The first motion was simply a motion to reconsider the agenda item on which there was a no vote at the last meeting, and that is the motion for the $129,000 escrow contribution for the project.
So we're just
We're just voting on whether or not to reconsider.
Right after there's a reconsideration motion that asks that we
And
have
you have the substitute motion
subject substantively, and another motion will be necessary if to dispose of that subject. Are there any further questions or?
I have a question.
Mrs. Go ahead.
So I've been listening as intently as possible, and I'm not sure what I missed that's changed. Something changed in the last couple minutes regarding the 129,000. I'm missing something.
If I may, Mrs. Sachs,
Thank you.
Mr. Gould during the recess contacted County Councilperson Cheryl Stevens to confirm that the 129,420 that she was offering in county ARPA money to the city was still available. I had a similar conversation with County Councilperson Stevens just minutes before this meeting, but having it verified another time certainly did not hurt. And it's good, belt and suspenders to know that we both heard from the council person. And Mrs. Weiss spoke favorably about the importance, and I don't want to put words in her mouth if my summary is inaccurate, she is welcome to add on. Spoke about the importance of this project and that in spite of the irregularities that have been perceived, real or that is, in spite of how we got here, the project's too important to not do. And that she favored the idea that it be reconsidered. Now, she was on the prevailing side she was not on the prevailing side of the motion 2 nights ago. She made the motion failed 3-3. So we are now at a motion for reconsideration under Robert's rules. Only somebody who was on the prevailing side of the item to be reconsidered may move to reconsider. Now, Councilperson Gould had voted no, as did Mrs. Blankfeld at the meeting 2 nights ago. But for reasons that they both set forth this evening, Mr. Gould was prepared to make the motion to reconsider, which he has the right to do at the next meeting of the council following the vote where the motion had failed. Mrs. Blankfeld seconded and also said that for the same reasons that Mr. Gould had eloquently stated, she seconded his comments as well. So where we are now is we have a motion to reconsider this item. That doesn't mean that we're done if the motion passes. It just means that we now return to the agenda item of a motion to approve an additional $129,420 to be placed in the escrow for the Cedar Road resurfacing project. And then there may be another motion that results in a different outcome of what happened 2 nights ago. Is there anything anybody care to add? And Mrs. Sachs, does that answer your question?
It does answer my question. I just want to say that I continue to, I wish I could just take at face value what's told to council from administration. But time and again, since I've been on council for just a little more than 2 months, that's not the case. So I'm glad that there's public debate, not social media, where the facts can finally come out. But it just seems like so much work on council's part to extract the basic information that needs to be provided for us to vote informed and in a manner that's appropriate. So I appreciate that we're getting there, but I can't ask strongly enough for administration to present all the facts as they are at the time, and not an emergency, but at the time that it happens, that it needs for the due process, so we can truly understand each other and move together cohesively and collaboratively. So thank you for taking the time to explain that and for the time to talk this through tonight.
Thank you, Mrs. Sachs. Are there any further questions or comments with regard to the motion?
Very good, Mr. Rowe.
So I want to just reiterate for the record, I support the project resurfacing Cedar Road. I've been very vocal about that for years. Cedar Road's in bad condition, and I've been supporting it through the budgeting process. I do still support resurfacing it. It will be a no vote because this is over budget. And I have, for almost every single thing in this city that's come before us that's over budget, I voted no, and I'm not going to change my stance now. It is over. I'm glad we found the funds that we didn't have yesterday. That makes me feel a little bit better, but I just want for the record to explain why I'm a no vote on this. It's not that I don't support the project. It's over budget, it's putting more money into something, and I didn't like the whole process that we went through.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Matt. Are there any further comments?
Yep. Mr. Mayor, I have a comment, if I can.
Mr. Cooney, you have the floor.
Great, thank you. I agree with, excuse me, Mr. King, that we have voted on this project several times. And I also agree with Mr. Rock that I personally accepting responsibility because we should have asked for more information for plans in regards to this. I was aware of the decorative concrete as it was previously, and I was aware of the bump outs at Thane. So these are not new. This is not new information for me. I'd have to go back in my notes, but I do believe that they came up through committee meetings. The bump outs in particular through some potential business opportunities on the Cedar Taylor Road, as was presented by the mayor. I am concerned that obviously about the costs, but I do agree again with Ms. Rock has a valid point that we should collectively as council for expenditures like this request more information, drawings, plans, and even alternatives should be made available so that we can make an informed decision. But I to say personally, not to speak for others, that we were not aware of some of these add-ins would not be appropriate on my part because I was aware of them previously. But I am concerned about the cost. I'm glad that our friends in South Euclid have been able to secure additional funding for it to make the project go forward, because this does not only benefit South Euclid, but University Heights and other community and other surrounding communities as a whole. So, but I do believe that we should personally look to ourselves as to what lessons we have learned, both on council and with the administration, so that we could make sure we don't put ourselves in this position again moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooney. If there are no further comments, Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll on the motion to reconsider?
Mrs. Sacks,
Aye.
Mrs. Blankenfeld. Aye. Mr. Rock,
Aye.
Mrs. Wise.
Aye.
Mr. Gould,
Aye.
Mr. Cooney,
Aye.
Mr. King.
Aye. Very good. The motion to reconsider passes. We're now on the agenda item of motion to approve an additional $129,420 to replace the escrow for the Cuyahoga City Road resurfacing project. So moved. There is a motion by Mr. Gould. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Blankenfeld. Any discussion on the motion? There is none. Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Sacks,
Aye.
Mrs. Blankenfeld.
Aye.
Mr. Rock,
Nay.
Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Gould,
Aye.
Mr. Cooney,
Aye.
Mr. King.
Aye. I vote 6-1, the ayes have it, and the motion passes. Is there a motion to adjourn? Second. Motion to adjourn by Mr. Rock, second by Mr. Gould. Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Sacks,
Aye.
Mrs. Blankenfeld. Aye. Mr. Rock,
Aye.
Mrs. Wise, Mr. Gould,
Aye.
Mr. Cooney,
Aye.
Mr. King.
Aye.
Very, very good, very adjourned. Thank you.
Yeah, last night, I went back and said something. I stopped, Sorry if I was kind of running. I got a couple, guys. You did not.
Yeah, there's a portion, you know, between, there's a portion between,